whole idea, but behind The Boy and the Sea, is taking the time to listen and be still and know what is right for you, and then to follow that. And I think that as I have developed that pattern in my life and practiced it, I care a lot less what other people think.
Welcome back to Happiness in Progress. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I'm an Emmy Award-winning journalist, a mom, wife, and you know what I like to say, just a person looking for more joy in the everyday. This podcast is brought to you by the Mail Tribune. You can find more podcasts at mailtribune.com. If you have not already, make sure you are subscribed. There are so many great episodes coming up for you. I don't want you to miss one of them. Today, I'm going to introduce you to Camille Andros. If you follow me on Instagram, you have already been introduced because I love her children's books. I share them often. She is a children's book author, and she's a mother of 6. Her newest book out today is called The Boy and the Sea. I wanted to talk to Camille today because I wanted to talk about how she was able to follow a dream that she had, an idea that she had, after she had already planned something else for her life. She went in a different direction. So we talked about how she was able to do that, walking down that path of unknown. We talk about her new book and how she's like the boy, really how all of us can be like the boy in that book, how to hear the pull of something more and how to walk confidently forward to that pull and away from the feeling of wondering, what are people going to think? I love this conversation. I think you're going to love it too. I think it's some great inspiration, especially if you've been sitting on a pull or sitting on something that you've wanted to move toward. So let's get to it. I'm so excited because you have a brand new book coming out. I'm a big fan of all of your books, so I'm very excited about this new one. We're going to talk about that. But first, I want to talk about your story. I know as moms and really as people in general, we get to a point in our lives where we're like, okay, we can't do anything new, old dog, new tricks, impossible, or it's too late to chase old dreams, or it's too late to have new dreams, all of that. Tell me, you did exactly that. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I had always planned to go to physician assistant school, PA school, once my youngest was in elementary school. I have 6 kids and had been licensed as a EMT, and I worked in a health clinic before I had kids. I love science and medicine. And that was kind of my plan, was to go to graduate school once the kids were in elementary school. But one thing I'd always wanted to do as well and have a huge love for was books. And I always wanted to see if that was explore that option, And so when my youngest was about a year old and everyone was finally sleeping through the night, and I felt like for the first time in 15 years, I was coming up for air. And I was like, all right, I still have a few more years until PA school. I might as well explore this book option. That's something I can do right now. So I did, and it turned out better than I could have expected. So yeah, my 5th book's coming out next month. So
and this will be coming out on the day the book is released. So if you're listening to this, that means you can go right now and go order it. Did you have any doubts as you were setting on to a new path?
Well, sure. I mean, I never thought, oh, sure, I could do this, really. I think maybe that's part of what helped me, though, is I thought there was no expectation, and it was just an adventure. It was like, all right, I'm going to look at these other women that I admire in this space, like Shannon Hale and Ali Condi and Stephanie Meyer. They're all moms that have young kids, but they're also really successful authors. And so I looked at what they had done and I was like, well, I can do that. And so I just started doing the things that they said they did. And it worked out. I think part of not having any expectation, and I was already not doing it. Does that make sense? So I knew what that was like. And I'm like, it's pretty great. Life's fine, So if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I've got nothing to lose here. So I can just try it. And if it works, it's awesome.
Wow. I think the expectation piece is such a big part of it, because when you go into something and you're like, I am going to be, JK Rowling, that
Yeah, right.
then that can be hard. Tell me a little bit about just walking through it as an adventure, what that was like, walking through it as an experience rather than I expect this to be whatever.
Yeah. Well, so the first part is just doing something that I love to do. I
Mhm.
loved story. I loved picture books specifically. That was an art form that I'd never outgrown. I feel like it is an art form, and it's not just for kids. I think picture books are for everybody. And there's the story told in the words, but then also there's whole other story, a whole other layer in the art. And as a child, I really wanted to know what was happening in the story. And so I would want to know what was next, what was next. But my dad taught me to appreciate the art and what's in that, what's happening on the page in that picture that isn't in the words. And so I think that's part of the process of following any dream that you want, is understanding that you can either have this list of things that you need to get through, or you can just enjoy that process and doing what you're doing, exploring, learning how to draft a picture book in the form that publishers want to see, like how do you do that? There is a specific way. And, do I want an agent? Figuring out and researching who would be the best agent to represent me. And then, understanding how to write a query letter, joining critique groups and making friends in that community. And that was that's the best part, is all these new friends that I have that are part of this world, and they taught me. And it's wonderful attending conferences, traveling. There's things that I did that I just love doing, whether or not I was a published author or not. It was all really enjoyable.
That's the
Yeah.
art part of your story, enjoying the art of the story. I love that.
Yeah.
What have you learned about your capacity to follow a dream or follow an idea?
So I'm a big Grey's Anatomy fan. And the last episode that Sandra Oh was on, the character Christina Yang, she leaves the show to go to Switzerland and be the head of some fancy hospital there. And the voiceover at the very end was her closing her old office door and opening her new one. It says, um, step forward into the unknown and expect it will be brilliant.
Hmm.
And I printed that off and hung it in my office, by my computer, right as I was starting that journey of going down, figuring out how to be published, to see if that was even a road I could travel. And I think just expecting it to be brilliant, but also, not having an expectation of what that looked like was really helpful.
Mm.
Did I answer the question?
Yes, that's so good. I love it. And I've quoted Grey's Anatomy on this podcast so much. So, everyone's going to be ready for that. What does it feel like to take the first few steps into the unknown?
It's scary. It's, you don't know your way. You can get lost. You can go a lot of different directions. You don't know anyone. The first few things that I did, I attended some writing conferences for the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. There were a couple different conferences that I went to in different parts of the country, because there were agents attending those conferences that I wanted to meet. And I didn't know a single soul. And, that was really outside of my comfort zone, to travel by myself to a place I'd never been, go in and put myself on, out on the line there like that with, here's this manuscript, here's this story that I love, here it is, and it's part of me. And the rejection that goes along with that, but also the self-discovery is really important,
Well,
I
I
think.
feel like every time, I mean, this is how I felt when I first released the podcast. Like, this is almost like stepping into the unknown. Like, what are people going to think? you know,
Yeah,
are people
yeah.
going to like not be cool with this? Do you have some of those kind of feelings every time you release a book, or have you moved past that?
So I love talking about this because I think it's a really nuanced topic.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The whole idea, but behind The Boy in the Sea, is taking the time to listen and be still and know what is right for you, and then to follow that. And I think that as I have developed that pattern in my life and practiced it, I care a lot less what other people think, because I know I'm doing what is true to me. And so of course my books aren't going to hit with everybody. That's fine. They're not supposed to, really. I would love it if everybody loved them all, and I was a bestseller and all of that, but that's not why I do it. First of all, I do it because I love the story and I want to share that with the world, and the people that resonate with that will find it, I hope, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So I think I worry less, and maybe it's just a product getting older too, where I'm more comfortable in my own skin and I don't care as much what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't ever get on Goodreads because that's a dangerous place for authors to go.
I'm glad you touched on that, because I think that the fear of what other people will think paralyzes a lot of people. What would be your advice to someone who feels paralyzed by that?
Ask yourself if this is something, well, there's a couple things you could do. Is this something you would want for your child? Or if you don't have children, maybe your future children or someone that you love very much, would you want that thing for them? Would you want them to follow their dream? Would you want them to go, step into that unknown, even though it's scary? What would you tell your best friend, if they were embarking on that? And then think about that for yourself and be like, all right, okay, so I'll have this fear of what other people will say, or of the unknown, or of failure. And it can sit there. It can come along for the ride. I think this is what Elizabeth Gilbert says in Big Magic. The fear can come along for the ride, but it can't drive. It can sit in the back seat and it can be there, but I'm navigating and I don't have to do what that fear says to do.
Oh, I love that. When you put a piece of you out there, I mean, like you talked about, writing is you're putting a piece of you on these pages. When you put that out for people, how are you feeling? What are some of the feelings that you have?
Vulnerable for
Mhm.
sure,
Mhm.
because it is a part of you. I think Stephen King said that you have probably 3 or 4 different themes that you write over and over and over in your life. And I have found that to be true with me. And so my books really do reflect a lot of me. Like my Charlotte the Scientist books, Charlotte's a serious scientist who has this huge family and can't find time or space to do her work. And it's funny, I thought when I was writing it, I was writing it about my husband, who's from a big family, and he has 8 sisters and a brother. And but then someone pointed out to me at a conference panel that I was doing, they're like, actually, don't you think that's about you? And it was like, oh yeah, it's about me.
That's amazing. Okay, I want
So,
to
and like with Eliza Hamilton, I felt that kinship with her also. She was a busy mother doing a lot of things. And I was more intrigued by her story than Alexander Hamilton's story. Like I wanted he did so many things, but he did them because in large part because of her, because she was enabling all of these things. She was his scribe. She was, she did so many things for him to be able, or that enabled him to do what he did. I was much more interested in her story, and the 50 years after Alexander Hamilton died and what she accomplished, and the orphanage that she founded and all of the people that she helped and served in her life. That was a really touching story to me.
Mm-hmm. I low key think Hamilton, that title is for Eliza Hamilton, not Alexander, the play.
Yeah, I do too. I totally think so too.
So, tell me about first of all, tell me what The Boy in the Sea is about. And then I'll ask my next question after that.
Sure. Okay. So The Boy in the Sea is about a boy who lives by the sea, and he loves to listen to the sea's whispers. And the sea is old and wise, and the boy will sit and listen, and the sea will tell him different things at different points throughout his life. And then he goes and does those things. And it's just a full circle story about life and listening, developing that skill to listen and then go and do that thing. And that, when he was a young boy, he thought that when he was older, he would know all the answers to his questions. And then when the boy is older, he realizes he actually learns more in the asking of the question, and he doesn't know all the answers, and he probably never will know all the answers. And becoming comfortable with that and sitting with that, that's something, that I think a lot of people wrestle with, sitting in that discomfort of not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
That can be really uncomfortable and tricky. So
it's such a beautiful book, and I wanted you to tell us what it was about first, so that I could now ask you, how do you see yourself in the boy?
Well, it's me. It was the girl in the sea. Honestly, it really was. And then my editor's like, well, we already have the dress and the girl, what if he was a boy? And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, so, he's a boy, but he's everyone, he's me, he's you, he's everybody. I am that boy. As a young girl, I thought, okay, when I'm old, I'll know all the answers. And now I'm not old, but I'm at the point where I thought as that child that I would know everything. I would have all the answers, I would know. And I've, over the past, 15 or so years, that's a wrestle that I've had, trying to sit with the not knowing and thinking that I knew all the answers. And, you go through this point, maybe like in your early 20s or late teens, where you think you do know all the answers maybe. And then something might break that, and shatter that. And everything you thought you knew isn't that, or, there doesn't have to be some big moment like that, but it's just, there's a process of like emotional maturity that I think we go through as humans that we don't talk about, that we go through, we talk about growth charts and milestones for kids. And even as an adult, once you hit 18, it's like, well, you're not going to grow anymore. You're going to be this height probably, or start shrinking in my case. But, and we don't really think about how our soul continues to develop and to grow and to evolve. And I think that's something that continues to be surprising, I think, to some people, when they realize that maybe what they thought was the top of their chart, their growth chart, isn't, and there's actually this whole other half of the growth chart that just keeps on going, that we don't see physically in people. So
I love that. And I think we can get caught up in that. We can get caught up in the plan, the college plan, and then you got your career plan, you got your family plan. And then there comes a time where you've done all the things that were on your plan.
Yeah,
and you're like, what is next for me? And I think that not knowing that there's so much more growth is a very scary part of life. And
Yeah.
you plan till you were 35 and then and then you're done.
And then what? Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
I love that you're bringing that into homes and into children's books as well. One of the parts that I really loved of the book, it repeats as this little boy goes to the ocean, he gets different messages. He then follows what the ocean told him to do, or the sea told him to do, and it says, from time to time it felt dark and dangerous. Other times it felt tranquil and tender. Tell me a little bit about that, those words in the human life.
I think, as a kid, and we start young, the boy, it shows in the art, him playing pirate, or playing pretend. And that's his dark and dangerous, that's about as dark and dangerous as a child really thinks of, or maybe a monster. But as an adult, that evolves and changes, dark and dangerous can be stepping into that unknown and doing that thing that you don't know how it's going to turn out, putting yourself out there in such a vulnerable way for the world to see. They might not like it, and that can be very scary. There's other things too. There's so much that has happened, and we could all just benefit, I think, from taking that time to stop and listen. There's social justice inequality, there's politically charged things happening, there's so much divisiveness in the world, but there's also so much good and so much hope right now. I was looking outside in my backyard, is woods, just hundreds of acres of woods, and the buds on the trees are just starting to grow and to bloom. And I remember thinking at this time last year how hopeless that felt to me. And then this time this year, how hopeful that feels. And taking what we've learned and really sitting with that from this past year, and listening to other people's experiences, other people's life that they have traveled, that we don't know that. Even though that hasn't been our life experience, that doesn't mean it's not someone else's. And so I think it's so important to take that time to listen and sit with what we've learned, what we felt. And I think that's one way that we'll really heal probably from this past year, is being able to feel all of that. And it's going to take time. It's going to take me time. It's been a really hard year.
Mhm.
But sitting with those feelings and listening, I think, is one way we can do that.
I think that that's the thing about life. We're going to go and we're going to sit and we're going to listen. And, maybe the message will be that first message that the little boy got, dream. And, it's really exciting. And that's the fun part. But then there's the part that it's going to be sitting and listening, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be what were the words, dark and dangerous. Like that's how it's going to
Yeah.
feel. But I think that that's where a lot of growth happens.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the things that you wrote in the book was he felt the pull of something more. What have you learned about yourself as you felt the pull of something more, and you've leaned into it and you've followed that pull?
To listen to it, first of all, right? If you push it away and tamp it down, you might not feel that pull. It might go away, or you might just become so immune to the feel of it and pushing it down that you don't feel it anymore. But I think recognizing it and feeling it and listening to it, and then not being afraid to go towards it and see where that leads you. I think that is where the adventure is.
Was there something that happened, or a moment that you thought this would make a really good book? Was there something that specifically inspired The Boy in the Sea?
Yeah, we were at the sea with my family. I live in North Carolina, and so we often spend time at the beach, and it's one of my favorite places to be. It's some place that I feel rejuvenated and renewed, and so I like to go there as often as I can. And I was just doing that. I was sitting, by the sea and listening, and literally the story, in the dedication I say, it's to the sea for whispering the story to me. And that's what it was. I just kind of sat there, and the lines just came, the story just came. And that doesn't happen very often to me. And so that was a special thing. And I didn't know at first that it would even be a book, but I looked at it. At first it was just a little poem, and I'm like, oh, but I could do this, and then I could do this, and then I could do this, and then it's a full circle story.
I think that goes back to the listening you were just talking about. You have to be listening to hear the pull. You can't hear the pull if you're crowding your entire life with, all the things.
Right.
Can you share a tip to listen, how to lean into that, how to listen?
At different points in my life, I've had to do different things. The part when I was a really busy mom with a lot of young kids, that was really hard to take time to listen. But I love running, and that's something that's become like a sacred practice to me, is either outside on the trail or down in my basement on my treadmill. And I will take time to not have any lyric music, no words coming at me. I can do instrumental music, and just run and listen, and see what comes. Another practice I like to do, that is more stillness oriented and not just running, but I think moving your body is key. I think that's elevates your mind to a higher place. And so after a run, I can sit in stillness and breathe, and think about things that I'm really grateful for and what is going well in my life. And then just ask the question, what do I need to know right now? And then just stop and listen. And usually it'll just be like a word or a phrase that will come, but something always comes. And I like to write those down as well, because I feel like if I'm paying attention, I can go back to it, but also if something that is interesting to look at over time, to see what those patterns of listening has taught me.
I love that. I love that so much. And I've seen that work in my own life, the running and the sitting in stillness. It's so powerful. I know not everyone likes to run, but maybe they can find something similar that can get the mind off all of the worries, right, and even just
in the shower or on a car ride.
Mm-hmm. How do you find joy in the good, the bad, and the in-between?
And that's what we've done this year, right? Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. I think being able to be grateful for the joy when it's there, and experience it and feel it, but then also not be afraid of the bad, to feel that as well, and recognize that that is part of life, and we're not doing anything wrong to feel that or to have those bad things. It is just part of the human experience. Some things are going to be good and some things are going to be bad. And asking ourselves, maybe what can we learn in this situation, might be more helpful than, being down on ourselves or thinking I should have done this or I should have done that. That's not, I don't like to should on myself. I don't think that's very, very helpful. And so just being able to be present and appreciate and be grateful for what I have, and also be grateful for those other times that are opportunities to learn. Like this year, I think we've grown in ways that we haven't even recognized yet, and become something that we didn't know we could become, that because we've gone through something we didn't know we'd ever have to go through.
There's been a lot of growth and it hasn't been easy, but I think within the growth, we'll have both of those times, the dark and dangerous times, the feeling of dark and dangerous, and then the tranquil times as well. So
Yeah,
I want to,
definitely.
I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I am so excited to read my kids the book. They're going to love it. And I'm just so
Oh, thank
excited
you.
about the work you're doing.
Oh, thanks so much, Danielle. I really appreciate it so much.
I hope you loved this conversation. Of course, as I mentioned, Camille's new book is out today, so you can go ahead and go buy that now. I will post all the links in show notes. And I want to thank you for being here on Happiness in Progress.